Hello everyone, it's nice to meet all of you. I'm Angel, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first episode of Arcane Secrets of the Craft. And I'd like to start this first episode by telling you a little bit about the channel. This first episode is meant to be in 3 parts. Each episode will be approximately 10 minutes long. The first video is meant to tell you a little bit about myself and the many years I've studied and practiced magic, and the purpose of why I'm making these videos in the first place. The second video is meant to cover a very basic but one of the most important questions. What is magic? Now, I've asked this question to a lot of people, and the most common answer I get is casting spells and enacting rituals. And to a certain degree, if that's your answer, you're not wrong. But in the second episode, we're going to have a much more in-depth answer to what magic is. In the third video, I will be going over what definitions are. And in the craft today, many people constantly use words that they don't fully understand the actual meaning of. But instead, people have an idea of the implied meaning of the word instead, but not the actual definition or the etymology of the word itself. That's what we'll be covering in the third episode, to give you some basic knowledge and information to work off of going into the future. Now, that'll be useful for this channel, but it'll just be useful for you in your magical career moving forward, and that's just helpful to you. Now, I like to give you a reason why you all should listen to me in the first place. I've been practicing craft for well over 30 years, and my past 3 decades plus since I've started. In that time, I've accumulated an assorted amount of academic knowledge and practical experience in the craft. Now, we all start somewhere for one reason or another, so this might be a good time to tell you all how I got started on my path. When I was 4 or 5, that's when some of my gifts started to awaken, and when you're a child, some of these gifts can be more of a curse. And that's when I was able, or starting to be able, to see spirits. I could then, and I can now. But when you're a child and you can see things that no one else can see, the elders around you are generally not going to believe you. They're going to assume you have an imaginary friend or you're just talking to yourself, and they're generally going to ignore you. One day I told my family, specifically my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother, that I could see spirits. Specifically, I could see my grandfather Elmer. He died several years before I was born. And when I told them I was talking to him, they believed me as much as any elder is going to believe a child that told them they could see spirits. I then described what he looked like to them, and he wanted me to deliver a message to them. That he was fine, and he'll be staying with us for a while, and he loves you all. They reacted to that as well as you might expect. My aunt was more neutral about it. My mother was more concerned, while my grandmother was more accepting. That seems like a good word. She was more religious and more superstitious than both of them, so she seemed to take comfort in knowing that her deceased beloved husband was amongst us. So she reacted the best of everyone. That leads me to my first area of specialty. I'm a necromancer. I also specialize in different areas of magic, several in fact. Direct energy manipulation, crystals, stones, minerals, and metals. The important thing to know and understand when it comes to this topic is the general knowledge about the stone, where the name of the stone comes from, what's its magical purpose, how it can help you in meditation, and how it affects your chakras. After that, another thing I specialize in is symbols. Now, just about every practitioner I've ever met utilizes symbols to one degree or another. It's one of the most basic things, but it's also one of the most all-encompassing things that appears more simple than it is and requires much more study than you might first think. I'm also a magical craftsman. In essence, that means I make wands and altars and jewelries, such as the pendant that I wear around my neck. This is a piece of selenite. I hand-carved it. I sanded it, drilled it, and leather wrapped it. Started out as a 5-inch rod. What selenite does is It's primarily useful for cleansings, and it's also used for protection or pseudo-protection, as it puts you in this bubble because of the purification effects or cleansing effects of the mineral. Anything that gets through the bubble is minimized. That's how it's used for protection. Now, when it comes to utilizing magical tools, if you already have an existing tradition, that sort of information will already be dictated to you more often than not. If you're a solitary practitioner, on the other hand, you can use whatever you like. Whatever suits your needs for whatever spell or ritual work you might be doing at the time. Okay. I also have an abundance of general information in several areas of the craft, such as meditation, the 7 chakras, direct and indirect energy manipulation. Indirect energy manipulation is like Reiki. Tantric magic, blood magic, divination, such as astrology, planetary astrology, numerology, pendulum and dowsing. Those two are very similar. Tarot card reading and palm reading, tea leaf reading, and bone reading. That's more complicated than it first sounds, and we'll get into that later. There's also the study of mystical and mundane herbs. This is one of the things people either have a lot of love for, and is one of the very first things people master, or it's one of the things people say for dead last. And that's because it's a little dangerous, but it's not for the mystical reasons. It's more for the mundane reasons. It's when people start to get into making medicines and potions and elixirs, they tend to make themselves sick at least once. So you have to be careful, and it's something you want to keep in mind. Now, we'll also be going over high magic and low magic, the law of 3, or the Eastern version of karma, understanding what white, gray, and black magic is, understanding sympathetic magic and magical correspondences, and most of magic is sympathetic magic. We'll be going over the study and the Pantheon of the Gods. In my experience, people tend to study 4 or 5 pantheons specifically, or the more popular ones, which are the Greeks, Egyptians, Norts, Celts, and if you're a hoodoo practitioner, you will have a strong working knowledge usually on the Loas. We'll also be going over the 3 minds. The conscious mind, and the conscious mind is concerned with the here and now. The subconscious mind is concerned with your instincts and your desires. And then there's the superconscious mind, sometimes referred to as the higher self. That depends on tradition, something you want to keep an eye out for. Superconscious mind is usually or shown as being concerned with your more altruistic goals. But I'm going to do a whole series on that later, so we'll just save that. We'll also be getting into accounting, and accounting is much more important than it first sounds. What accounting is, you're taking account of what you're doing. There are 3 journals for that, 3 or 4. There's your field journal, which is more important if you're an herbalist or a cryptozoologist. There's a dream journal, and really everyone should keep a dream journal. A dream journal gives you insight into your subconscious mind through your dreams, going back to your instinct and desires. And you keep track of those because it's good to know where you are and where you've been, and that's just good to know in general. And you'll also have your dream key in there. That's how you interpret your dreams. And I'll also be doing a whole series on that, so we'll save that for a little bit later. And then there's your magical journal. Your magical journal, if you're watching this, is probably the most important thing to you. Your magical journal is where you keep all the things you've learned, or where you keep what is generally referred to as proto-rituals. The things that went right and the things that went wrong. And when something went wrong, how did you fix it? Did you change a candle, an herb, a stone, a magical tool? Did you change the astrology? And however you fixed it goes in there, and the polished version of that goes into your grimoire or your book of shadows. Then we'll be going over what your magical name is and why it's important, and it's more important than people give it credit for. We'll also be going over how to craft your own spells and rituals. Here's something good to note, that 99% of magic is studying and research. The last 1% is your actual spell and ritual work. Spells are incantation, the spoken word. Your rituals are the actual act of practicing magic or enacting the rituals themselves. People have a misconception of what we do as practitioners. There's so much more to the craft than it first appears. I hope I've been able to illustrate that to a certain degree by now. As we go on and I talk to you about different topics, you're going to start to figure out what's more important to you. What are you going to specialize in? What are you going to choose to master? Because that's really the point. That's what really matters. What are you going to become a master of? You see, I'm doing these videos mostly because I want to help you avoid the mistakes I made when I first started. Most practitioners usually make at least one large mistake at some point in their magical careers. They may not tell you what they did exactly, and they may not tell you what went wrong. But certain mistakes that we can make can follow us for days or weeks, months, years, sometimes decades into the future. After these mistakes have been made, that's usually when practitioners tend to slow down and become more calculating and more methodical about what they're doing, after these hard lessons have been learned. So if I can help you avoid the minor and major mistakes I made, I'll consider these videos a great success. Now, I'm here to mentor you to a certain degree. I didn't meet my mentor until I was in my late 20s. By then I was practicing the craft for 20 plus years. I had to learn lessons the hard way through trial and error. So I hope I can make these videos and I'm able to turn a whole army of initiates and dabblers and novices into a full-fledged army of well-trained and knowledgeable practitioners. Because one day, some of you will be mentors and masters. You'll be passing your knowledge on of the craft to your students. And that's the ultimate goal, to pass on the knowledge of the craft. As we've learned these things in this generation, where it's our responsibility to pass them on to the next generation. You see, as the previous generation held this knowledge and trust for us, now it's our turn to hold this knowledge and trust for the next generation. To teach and push the knowledge of the craft one step further for the next generation so they can do the same. And that's what we're here to do. As practitioners, we're here to learn, teach, and pass on our knowledge. This is the forum I'm using to pass on my knowledge to all of you. Now, this seems like a good place to end the first episode. And before I do, I'd like to also mention I have a Facebook group called Arcane Secrets of the Craft. And I'm hoping some of my members from there will come join us here. And I'm hoping some of the people that see these videos here will come join my Facebook group. So this is usually where everyone says like, share, and subscribe. So do that. So until our next video, I wish you all the best of luck. And peace be with all of you. Have a nice night, everyone.